We are just now getting our first reaction to Roseanne Barr's tweet from its target, former Obama senior advisor Valerie Jarret. She's speaking to MSNBC right now at the Everyday Racism at America Forum. Take a listen.
Tone does start at the top, and we like to look up to our president and feel as though he reflects the values of our country. But I also think every individual citizen has a responsibility, too. And it's up to all of us to push back. Our government is only going to be as good as we make it be. And as Reverend always taught me, you have to be, people on the inside have to push hard, and people on the outside have to listen.
Zerlina, people on the inside have to push hard. To the question I was asking Ashley about, do you get the sense that anyone on the inside is pushing hard against this president who, we aired the reel, and that really wasn't even everything of his own racist comments?
I don't think we have any way of knowing whether or not they're pushing back hard. So I want to be fair there. There perhaps is somebody in the White House that is willing to tell the president that what he's saying is racist or sexist in the appropriate context. But if you feel that way, then why are you still working in the White House? I remember being on air right after Charlottesville and saying if you disagree with these comments, which I hope that you would disagree that there are not good Nazis, then you should seek new employment. Unless your job is essential to national security, I think this is a fundamental issue. And if you don't think that racism is a fundamental issue, then I would implore that you try to process why that is as well. Because I think that we need to start talking about this in a serious way and stop acting like racism is only the N-word or a burning flag or the Ku Klux Klan.
So I remember hearing from a lot of folks, especially in the national security apparatus, that these were the darkest days there, that a lot of people did think about leaving, especially when a lot of people, free to speak their minds, if you will, were saying that everyone that works there is now stained with the president's comments after Charlottesville. Do you get any sense that they have their arms around the proportionality of sort of the totality of Donald Trump's racist comments?
Well, I think a couple things. In the same way that when I've talked to people inside the West Wing and they said at the beginning of the administration when he would send out a tweet, maybe it was racist, maybe it was sexist, or just a tweet that threw their day into shambles. Initially, they would say their heart would race and they would panic and they wouldn't know what to do. And now it's just become sort of a part of daily life in the West Wing. And I think there is sort of a normalization argument about this, where if you've been there since the beginning, the next thing doesn't feel that much different from what you've already experienced. And then just to go back briefly, I covered Donald Trump on the campaign trail in 2016. I traveled. I went to just about every single one of his rallies. And I want to be clear, I don't believe, and I think it is overly simplistic and unfair and inaccurate to say that, all Donald Trump supporters are racist or sexist.
Of course.
But the thing I was struck by was that at these rallies, I heard phrases and words, racist, sexist, anti-Semitic, that in covering other campaigns, Democratic and Republican, I had never heard before, and you would never expect to hear in a public forum. And I was always struck by, it felt like at these rallies, a permission structure was created for people to say things and do things that they would never do, or very few of them would ever do in regular life. And it was very striking to see. You would be interviewing someone before the rally, and they could not be more polite and more respectful and more thoughtful. And then suddenly the rally started, and it just sort of brought out a frenzied dark side in people. And I think that is also some of what we're seeing here.
I mean, if we're going to be honest, Steve Schmidt, some of that had its birth in the Sarah Palin crowds. I mean, you and I both saw it. And while across the Midwest, John McCain was reprimanding his supporters when they called President Obama, then Senator Obama, a Muslim, Sarah Palin reveled in what you just described.
Post the economic crash, when it was clear we were going to lose, we had supporters in these crowds were frustrated. It made us cringe. Our candidate denounced it. But let's come forward now to 2018. We have a president of the United States. And first off, any of these people who are working in a political capacity in this White House, they are complicit with this. They are not hostages. They are not serving the better angels of our country. They are in on it 100%. The coarsening of this country with this mean-spirited, racist nonsense.
Do you carve anybody out, Secretary Mattis?
I carve out people in vital national security functions that are serving in non-political capacities. I'd put Secretary Mattis into that role. For example, when Pompeo goes out last week and he talks about, well, no, these words just kind of get thrown around out there. BS. part of a deliberate disinformation campaign by this president. We've never seen the level of lying. We've never seen the level of race baiting. You know, when we think about the greatest president this country has ever produced, Abraham Lincoln, we think about Lincoln calling to the better angels of our nature. Donald Trump every day, from the moment he wakes up to the moment he retires, summons our worst demons. And the people in that White House are in on it with him. They are coarsening the country. The level of lying, the level of deceit, the level of attacks on our institutions, the sundering of the country for political purposes, all of it. It is deliberate, it is purposeful, it is premeditated. They know exactly what they're doing. There's a political strategy to it. It is not providential. It is not accidental. And you either look at that and you recognize not only is it bad, it's borderline evil, and it is hurting this country. And last word about Valerie Jarret, who served from the moment of President Barack Obama's inauguration to the moment of Donald Trump's inauguration. She served with dignity, with honor, with the qualities of probity and rectitude that are completely missing from anybody that's serving in this White House. And so Valerie Jarret, when we look at her conduct as a senior official of the government of the United States compared to these people, give me a break.
It reminds me of the line in American President. She's way out of your league, Mr. President. Let's watch more of Valerie Jarret just now.
I think we have to turn it into a teaching moment. I'm fine. I'm worried about all the people out there who don't have a circle of friends and followers who come right to their defense. The person who's walking down the street minding their own business and they see somebody cling to their purse or want to cross the street. Or every black parent I know who has a boy who has to sit down and have a conversation, the talk, as we call it. And those, as you say, those ordinary examples of racism that happen every single day. And I think that's why I'm so glad to be here this evening talking with all of you.
Eddie Glaude, Valerie Jarret, just the embodiment of grace under fire, but her words were actually the same words Mika Brzezinski used after Donald Trump tweeted about her bloody facelift. Mika said in her first public comments, Mika Brzezinski, the co-anchor of Morning Joe, a show you and I are lucky enough to appear on often, Mika said, I'm fine, but almost exactly what Valerie said, I'm worried about the people who don't have a voice, who don't have a platform, who don't have friends to stick up for them. Can you speak to that part of what Valerie's trying to articulate there?
Sure. So let's be clear that Donald Trump is just an exaggerated indication of what's happening in the country. He's the tip of the iceberg. He's not the iceberg itself. Right. And what Valerie Jarret points our attention to, or directs our attention to, is this, Nicolle. We could talk about the politics. We could talk about what's happening in the White House and folks who are complicit with it. But for a lot of black folk in this country, it seems as if, in the generality, white people have lost their damn minds. And we have to raise our children in the midst of this. We have to, when they go, those two black men in Starbucks, they were somebody's babies, even though they were grown men. That child that a police officer had hung up by his feet at the Waffle House, that's somebody's child. And so here we are in this environment where many of us in our past, in the histories of our families, have had people strung up from trees, have had to deal with legal segregation, have had to deal with ongoing insult and injury and harm, find ourselves in a historic moment right now where we have to worry about raising our kids. We have to worry about whether or not they will have opportunity. So we could talk about the politics, but there's something, and Steve, you get at this, you've touched on this. There's something deeply insidious that's borderline evil here. And it's not just simply Donald Trump. It's about the moral monsters that are running around this country and claiming it as their own and making so many people vulnerable. And it's, you know, my son just graduated yesterday on Sunday. And I'm thinking about how joyous he was, saw that big, beautiful smile. And then I got to worry about him, Nicolle. We have to worry about, why? Because we can't seem to look the ugliness of who we are, not just simply Donald Trump, but who we are and who we have been, so that we can imagine ourselves better, you know? But again, as I'm prone to do, I'm being a moralist.
You got me, though. I want you to keep talking. Tell me what we do next, Eddie Glaude.
I think it involves an honest confrontation. You know, I'm working on this book on James Baldwin, and Baldwin at the moment in which he died, he was deeply and profoundly disillusioned that the country once again had failed to deal with the contradictions at its heart. But he said we have no time to despair, that those of us who have a vision of democracy, who have a fundamental respect for the dignity and standing of all Americans, no matter their zip code, no matter the color of their skin, no matter who they love, no matter their gender, that we have to get out here, not just listen, but we have to fight. We have to fight for a better America. And we can't cede it to these folk who are in some ways nurturing themselves in hate. And that's going to require not only voting, it's going to require getting out and doing the heavy lifting in our neighborhoods with people who often don't look like us.
Jason Johnson, let me ask you to just pick this up and run with it. If Barack Obama were to use his megaphone, if George W. Bush were to continue the conversation that he started by talking about racism being emboldened, if Joe, I mean, do we need, is it time for everybody to step up and out of retirement? Have the times become too perilous for people to take a pass on using their voices at this moment? Are we in too much trouble for people to stay quiet?
Oh, Nicolle, I think we're in a tremendous amount of trouble, but I think this is a bigger job than the super team of ex-presidents, as we used to have on SNL. I think we're in a much more dangerous situation, and here's why, even before we get to who can fix it. This is a national security issue. And I always think sometimes people overlook this. The divisions in this country by race, that's what was being exploited on Facebook. That's what other foreign leaders try to do. They want to keep this country fighting at the neck constantly about these kinds of issues so that we are weaker as a whole. Whether we're fighting about immigration, whether it's about white racism against black people, these are national security issues. We cannot function as a country as long as these battles are seen as, oh, this is about personal inconvenience as opposed to a life issue for black people and white people. Heather Hair is white. These sorts of things happen. But I will say this as far as the solutions. It would be fine for presidents to come out and talk, but this is not about the president, or this is not about previous presidents coming about. This is about regular people day to day making honest to goodness decisions about the humanity of other people. It's about other people standing up at Starbucks and saying, that's wrong. It's about a woman saying, hey, you can't call the cops on my husband at a barbecue in Oakland. It's about a store manager walking up to a group of people and saying, hey, what you're doing is racist and it's problematic. There has to be a return of shaming and economic consequences to this kind of overt bigotry. Because, look, we're always going to have racist people in America. There always have been racist people in America. But what's been happening is they've been talking real fast and loose for the last 2 years because they feel empowered by Donald Trump. And it's incumbent upon the rest of us to show them there are consequences for this behavior. You can't change people's hearts, but you can change their behavior publicly. And that's on everybody to do something about.
Jason Johnson and Eddie Glaude, we are so grateful to have had both of you for so much of our hour today. Thank you. When we come back, Donald